Steve Rogers wasn't wearing a motorcycle helmet by design. He was wearing one by law. Reb Brown said it plainly in later interviews. The California Highway Patrol would not let him ride a motorcycle on public freeways without a certified helmet, and the shield had to be see-through for the same reason, so he could watch the road through it while riding. The costume you remember wasn't a creative swing. It was a regulation, absorbed into a superhero suit because there was no other way to legally get the bike on camera in the state where they were filming. 12 facts about the 1979 CBS film that turned Captain America into a highway safety compliance case. The budget logic behind it, the studio quietly running 3 Marvel heroes at once, the casting choices nobody expected, and the sequel that landed Christopher Lee and then vanished without explanation. By the end, you'll understand exactly how one traffic regulation reshaped an entire costume department's decisions, and why a film built almost entirely out of compromises still holds together as its own strange thing.
Mr. Brackett, you're supposed to put the dust-free gown on before you come into the room?
Number 1. Forced into a helmet. Reb Brown has said directly that the helmet wasn't his idea, the studio's stylistic preference, or a budget shortcut. It came from the California Highway Patrol, which required a certified motorcycle helmet for any rider on a public freeway, and Rogers spent much of the film on a freeway. The production built the helmet into the costume because there was no version of the story where Brown rode that motorcycle bareheaded and legal. What looked like the single strangest departure from the comics was, underneath it, paperwork, a state vehicle code, not a costume designer's sketchbook. Every fan theory about the helmet as a stylistic choice, some deliberate nod to motorcycle culture, some attempt to modernize the look, turns out to be solving a problem that was never creative in the first place. It was administrative.
America just broke Rogers out of jail. He's headed north on 401.
Number 2. The shield had to double as a windshield. Brown explained the logic himself. The shield was heavy plastic, and it had to be clear for the exact same highway patrol reason as the helmet. He needed to see oncoming traffic through it while riding. A solid metal disc, the shape everyone expected, would have blinded him at speed, so the production built a shield that could survive being thrown on camera and still let a stunt rider see the road ahead of him at speed. The clear shield looked strange to comics readers, and it still does. To the people building the vehicle sequences, it was the only shield that actually worked. Number 3. The motorcycle and the van were the actual special effects budget. There was no money here for constructed sets or large stunt teams, so the modified Yamaha and the customized van became the action architecture of the entire film, the thing the camera could always cut to when the story needed momentum. Most of the bike's showier features were cosmetic, built to read well on film without needing to function for real. It's a production solving a budget problem by making the vehicle do the work a fight scene usually does, motion standing in for money. Watch the film again with that in mind, and the pattern becomes obvious. Nearly every sequence built for spectacle routes through the bike or the van, because those were the 2 assets the budget had already paid for and could reuse scene after scene.
This is Border 3. Come in, Border 1.
Number 4. One network was quietly running 3 Marvel heroes at once. Universal Television produced this film, and Universal was also producing The Incredible Hulk, which had premiered on CBS in November 1977 with Lou Ferrigno. CBS was airing Captain America alongside its Hulk franchise under the same studio relationship. The network was separately airing The Amazing Spider-Man with Nicholas Hammond, made by a different production company entirely, but running on the same schedule and aimed at the same audience. It didn't need to share a studio to share a strategy. All 3 were part of the same late 70s push to see how much Marvel material one network could carry before it got labeled the Superhero Network, which is exactly what eventually happened to CBS.
Full latent ability gain.
Number 5. A familiar face from Salzburg was already in the room. Heather Menzies played Dr. Wendy Day, and 1979 audiences already knew her face. She'd played Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music in 1965, one of the most watched films in American broadcast history by that point. She'd spent the previous season as Jessica in the CBS series Logan's Run, opposite Gregory Harrison. By the time Captain America aired in January 1979, she'd carried CBS genre and family programming through most of the decade's second half, a quiet through line most viewers recognized without ever consciously tracking it, the same face turning up in 3 different worlds.
It hasn't been a bad life. Lots of times I feel pretty good in here.
Number 6. Dracula signed on as the villain. Christopher Lee played the antagonist Miguel in the sequel, Captain America 2: Death Too Soon, which aired that November, less than 10 months after the first film. By then, Lee had already played Scaramanga in The Man with the Golden Gun and had been Hammer's Dracula for 2 decades. An actor with that theatrical resume taking a villain role in a modest CBS television sequel is one of the stranger credential mismatches in the whole production, and it still lands as a surprise today. Number 7. The Son, not the Soldier. The producers didn't wake a World War II super soldier in the present. They built Steve Rogers as a contemporary California drifter, an artist, a biker, a Marine veteran, who is the son of the original Captain America, inheriting the name rather than surviving into it. That single choice is the one every other departure in this film traces back to. The helmet, the van, the villain's motive, the whole shape of the story. The stated logic was accessibility. A 1979 audience might not connect to a man frozen since the war, so the production built a contemporary one from scratch, gave him a van and a motorcycle instead of a battlefield, and let him keep the name his father had earned. That decision also quietly solved a continuity problem nobody had to explain on screen. A son inheriting a mantle needs no flashback to the 1940s, no frozen in ice exposition, no history lesson before the plot can start moving.
I understand, but it's over.
Number 8. Sincerity did work, the script couldn't. Reb Brown was a former college football player, and that physicality gave the stunt sequences real credibility. But the more specific thing critics point to is his total lack of irony. He played Rogers as genuinely, uncomplicatedly heroic, with no wink to the camera about how far the character had drifted from the comics, and no visible embarrassment about the helmet, the van, or the plastic shield. That earnestness gave a script full of departures from Marvel canon, an emotional center it otherwise wouldn't have had. It's not visible in any single scene. It accumulates across the full 2 hours, scene by scene, until the sincerity is doing more narrative work than the plot.
They ridiculed your father, remember?
Number 9. Hondo turned villain. Steve Forrest played Lou Brackett, a corporate antagonist, after the flag formula for personal gain. To 1979 viewers, Forrest was Hondo from the ABC series SWAT, a face built entirely around law enforcement authority. Watching him play a greedy formula thief was a deliberate piece of casting against type. Brackett isn't a cosmic villain. He's a conventional television heavy, motivated by money, which fits what this film actually is underneath the costume, a crime thriller wearing a superhero's clothes, with the flag formula standing in for whatever a normal thriller villain would be chasing instead. By this point, a pattern is visible. The costume, the vehicle, the origin, the villain, all of it had been rebuilt from the ground up to fit a 1979 network schedule and its regulations. Not because nobody knew the source material, because the decision had been made early and consistently to replace it with something that could legally be filmed.
Be Captain America, Steve. Jam Captain America down their throat.
Number 10. The serum got a new name. The film never calls it the Super Soldier Serum. It's Flag, Full Latent Ability Gain. Keeping the original name would have pulled the story back toward its wartime origin, which this production's contemporary approach and its budget were both built to avoid. Renaming the formula sealed off that historical door before anyone could open it. It's a small detail that reveals the production's entire strategy in miniature.
Thinking about staying a few days and checking into the boarding house.
Number 11. The Quiet Handler. Simon Oakland played Dr. Simon Mills, the government scientist who hands Rogers the flag formula and functions as the film's stand-in for a spy agency. Oakland was already a familiar face from Kolchak the Night Stalker and a long run of television drama. This version of Marvel's institutional world isn't a high-tech agency. It's one older scientist in a modest government office. Mills is, in practice, what this production could afford instead of an organization, and his presence tells you almost everything about the scale this film was working at. Compare that to the layered intelligence apparatus later Marvel adaptations would build, and the contrast says less about creative ambition and about what a single television budget in 1979 could actually support.
Captain America.
Captain America?
Number 12. The third film that never happened. Captain America 2 performed well enough that CBS and Universal reportedly discussed a third film. It never got made. No documented cancellation memo, no confirmed contract dispute, no on-record creative falling out explains why a series with reportedly decent numbers simply stopped after 2 entries. Reb Brown has stayed publicly warm about both films in interviews and at conventions since, part of a pattern among actors from this exact era of low-budget television superhero work who chose to embrace the material rather than distance themselves from it, treating a helmet forced on them by a state agency as something worth defending decades later. The MCU's Captain America: The First Avenger arrived 32 years later with the real cowl, the metal shield, and the wartime origin restored in full. The 1979 version had a clear visor because a state highway agency said so, a shield you could see through for the same reason, a van instead of a battlefield, and a formula called flag instead of a serum. Neither one is the more legitimate Captain America. Both were built by exactly what their moment, and in this case, exactly what the California Highway Patrol allowed. A production shaped less by imagination than by what a state highway agency and a television budget would permit, and still recognizably Captain America by the time it was over. The ratings said a third film should have followed. Nobody on record has ever explained why it didn't. If you were working in television in 1979 or 1980, or if you've seen documentation of why the Reb Brown series ended there, that's a gap nobody has filled publicly. This is exactly the audience that might have the answer.